So it's been a few days since the Ahsoka trailer dropped, but since I was traveling and forgot to pack my microphone, I wasn't really able to record, so sorry for the late upload. Anyways, let's get straight into the breakdown.
War is inevitable. One must destroy in order to create. We are no Jedi.
I started hearing whispers of Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire.
We begin the trailer with what looks like a Republic Jedi shuttle approaching a Rebel transport, which would explain why the New Republic allowed the ship to enter the docking bay, likely believing that they were Jedi. Shin and Baylan attack the New Republic, essentially the precursor to the scene where we see Shin storming the bridge, and we then cut to a sculpture of some sort, holding a golden orb. It's not entirely clear as to what this means, but it seems to be referencing a long-dead civilization, somehow linking the map to Thrawn. The sculpture is likely found in the same site Ahsoka visits at the beginning of the teaser trailer. We then cut to a scene where we see Shin, Baylan, and the magistrate approaching the same location where we will see Ahsoka and Baylan face off later in the trailer. We see the same Republic Jedi shuttle that boarded the Republic transport earlier in the background.
What happens when we find Thrawn?
Power, such as you've never dreamed.
I've spent most of my life fighting a war. That's why I'm trying to convince you to help me prevent another one.
The magistrate activates a map which happens to be a map of the entire galaxy, including what seems to be a charted map of the unknown regions. Now, the unknown regions are supposed to, well, be a mystery, as the navigation in that region is particularly difficult due to the numerous anomalies disrupting the hyperlanes, essentially making it very difficult to explore. But it's pretty clear that whoever is responsible for this map seems to have been able to chart out the region, which is likely why the magistrate is using it to locate Thrawn. And this seemingly little detail basically confirms that Thrawn has been lost in the unknown regions ever since the events of Rebels. Shin asks Baylan what happens next when they find Thrawn, and Baylan tells her,
Power, such as you've never dreamed.
Which really does beg the question of what exactly are Baylan and Shin after. It sort of brings up the question as to what happens when they find Thrawn, and for what purpose do they intend to use their newfound power for. We then cut to Hera trying to convince the New Republic leadership of the Thrawn threat, and it seems as though the New Republic is somewhat hesitant to act. Under the leadership of Mon Mothma, the New Republic's commitment to demilitarization and pacifist policies could be tying their hands in terms of what they can provide. This essentially translates into New Republic in action, the same inaction that eventually allows the First Order to rise to power.
I both know who could help you with this.
She's still just as stubborn as ever.
I bet your master found you difficult at times.
Anakin never got to finish my training. I walked away from him, just like I walked away from Sabine.
You never made things easy for me, Master.
We were then given the sense that Sabine and Hera's relationship isn't all that peachy. We get a brief scene of Sabine speeding down the Lothal Highway, the very same that was featured in Rebels, a route that Ezra took, allowing him to be introduced to the Ghost crew. Hera then says,
I bet your master found you difficult at times.
And Ahsoka tells her that Anakin never finished her training, as she did leave the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars. But the more important part actually comes later when Ahsoka mentions that she walked away from Sabine as well. Sabine then proceeds to call Ahsoka
Master.
Which seems to indicate that Ahsoka had previously been training her possibly in the ways of the Jedi. Given that at the end of Rebels, Ahsoka and Sabine seemingly embarked on a journey to find Ezra, the situation that we see here seems to show that things didn't end on a good note between the two. Not to mention Ahsoka telling Hera that she walked away from training Sabine in the same sentence she talks about walking away from Anakin seems to indicate that she has some trouble with confidence when it comes to training other people. The same sort of issue that I previously talked about in another video with her refusal to train Grogu.
As a Jedi, sometimes you have to make the decision no one else can. But I'm counting on you to see this through.
Nice haircut. Sometimes we have to do what's right, regardless of our personal feelings.
Buckle up.
If we don't stop Thrawn, everything will be in vain.
You have no power.
Anakin spoke highly of you.
I'm not here to discuss my past.
We have a lot of work to do.
Once a rebel, always a rebel.
We see Ezra share a few words through a hologram, and we then take a look at Sabine's helmet. And the colors of the helmet are very different from the earlier versions in Rebels. The colors and patterns that we see here seem to indicate a much more hardened and mature Sabine. No longer the brash character symbolized through her use of brighter colors. Sabine gets to cut her hair, and in the background we can even see a graffiti of a cancelled stormtrooper helmet. Sabine cuts her hair short, symbolizing her return to adventure. The two enter hyperspace, and if you slow down the footage, just behind Sabine is actually Master Hu Yang, the droid in charge of teaching younglings how to craft their own sabers back in the Clone Wars. So it looks like Master Hu Yang is going to be the mandatory droid companion of this Star Wars story. Sabine approaches the mural with Ezra on it, the very same that we saw at the end of Rebels. We see Sabine blast some ships, and we then get our first look at a live-action Purrgil. The Purrgils were of course the whale-like creature that could access hyperspace, and the same creatures Ezra used to transport Thrawn and him away from Lothal. We see another ship chasing Sabine and Ahsoka, and in the background we can see just how big this specific Purrgil is. Now of course Purrgils that we see in Rebels did vary in size, but I don't think we've seen one quite this big. The ship chasing Ahsoka and Sabine is probably Shin, who is on a mission to hunt them down. In that same scene, we can also see Ahsoka in a drastically different outfit from the grey robes she normally wears. We then get our first look at Thrawn face to face, and while this isn't really new considering that we were already showcased this at the celebrations, what's actually really interesting is not Thrawn himself, but what is behind him. If we zoom in a little closer, we can see someone wearing a sort of helmet with an outline somewhat resembling a stormtrooper or a Phase 3 clone helmet. But unlike the other two helmets, this one seems to have a visor on it, which is somewhat reminiscent of the clone trainee helmets that we saw back in Kamino. And this could very well be the new type of troopers that Thrawn is using, or perhaps some version or iteration of the Sparty clones he used in Legends. And the helmets could very well be intended to evoke the similar art design as the clones or stormtroopers. We then see Sabine face off against Shin in a forest, who tells Sabine,
You have no power.
but more on that in another video. Baylan tells Ahsoka that Anakin spoke highly of her, letting us know that Baylan is more than familiar with Ahsoka, having been a Jedi during the Clone Wars. Ahsoka then tells him that she doesn't want to discuss her past, again seemingly reiterating the idea that her past relationship with Anakin and her walking away is still weighing heavily on her mind. We see the ruins Ahsoka visited in the teaser blown up behind her, and we see Sabine use a rope to strangle a guy, and this is known as a fiber cord whip, a weapon iconic to the Mandalorians and the very same type used by Mando against Ahsoka. The guard in question also appears to be a henchman of the magistrate, considering that the design of his uniform is the very same type that we saw in The Mandalorian. We then end the trailer with Ahsoka facing off against an Inquisitor in a forest, and in that very same forest, Shin is also fighting against Sabine. The Inquisitor also happens to be the same one that Ahsoka faced off against on a different planet as shown in the teaser trailer. And if you take a look at the captions in the video, the Inquisitor actually has a name, and it goes by Marok, which just so happens to be the same name of the wolf owned by the bounty hunter Embo, also previously seen in the Clone Wars. Now of course Marok could very well be a placeholder for the Inquisitor's real name, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So that's all for this breakdown. Be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I'm the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.